Identify what type of fish it is. So the Gemara just says that it is doimel dag. It is just similar to fish.
Doimel dag means that it lives in the sea as well, but it can breathe air, or does it mean doimel dag where it uses the gills to take oxygen from the water? What means doimel dag?
Okay, so Rashi on the spot says that doimel dag, which means that the shape of the fish, the shape of the chilazin, it has a similar shape to a fish. The question you raise is an important question, and we'll mention it
later,
a little bit later, as the time will allow, of course. On the other hand, Rashi, in a different place in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph, Rashi says that it is a tilas sheyoytze min hayam, not a tilas sheyoytze min oretz, yoytze min hayam. So here the Noid Yehuda finds a hint that we might say that the chilazin is actually a kosher fish, although Rashi, as you see, mentions and he calls it a tilas, but he notes that Rashi says instead of saying that it is yoytzim and ayaboshe, as he says in Menachos, here he mentions that it is yoytzim and ayam, that it comes out of sea. If it is yoytzim and ayaboshe, then of course there's no place to say that it is a kosher fish, because it's yoytzim and ayaboshe and it's a tilas. But if it's yoytzim and ayam, it might be a kosher fish. But later on he brings the Rambam. The Rambam says it brings it out much more clearer. In Perek Beis Vilchos Tzitzis, the Rambam says that the chilazin, what type of creature is it? Udag hanimtza b'yam hamelech. Dag. The Rambam doesn't make it as if it was similar to a fish, but as a matter of fact, he notes that it is a fish. So if it is a fish, so it might be a kosher fish, although the Rambam doesn't say in open that it is a kosher fish, but it might be significant for us as a kosher fish. And the Noid Yehuda, he finishes the topic on the chilazin, and he says that if we will say that the chilazin is a kosher fish, this would answer a very serious question. Because if it is not a kosher fish, it's a min tomei that is prohibited for eating. So if so, how come that the Torah allows us to die better to say, how come the Gemara allows to make the tchelis, to dye it out of the chilazin, which is a dover tomei. We have a rule in the Gemara Shabbos. The Gemara Shabbos brings a rule: Lo huchsha lemelecha shemayim elo min amuta b'ficha. Let's put it this way. In Tefillin, the Gemara says, "Ein koisrin," you shouldn't write the Tefillin. Of course, the Tefillin should be written on parchment. Now the question is, parchment is made out of the skin of the hide or skin of an animal. Now you could take any animal practically to write upon. Still, the Gemara puts down a rule and says that you couldn't write the tefillin ela al oil behemoth tahora b'lvad, only on the hide of a kosher animal. Why? Because we have a pasuk by tefillin that says, "Leman tiyeh toras Hashem leficha." What does it mean to say? What's the connection between toras Hashem and leficha? We're talking about putting on the tefillin and not about learning the parsha of tefillin. This is that we need some material to use for the mitzvah. It has to be from a kosher min. How come? How do you know it? The pasuk says by tefillin, because it says leman tiyeh toras Hashem leficha. Toras Hashem is in general. It means not only tefillin, but also all other mitzvahs of the Torah as well. So,
how do we know it doesn't have to be shchita, shochet? How do we know that even if it's a treifende mittebeficher with a treifende animal, we're allowed to use?
You ask a wonderful question.
Gabriel,
we have a very nice question, and we should answer on this question. How come any part of the animal which is not kosher, as for instance, we know in every animal there's gid anoshe, which is prohibited to eat, but actually we find that we're allowed put together
The gidin,
to nayin, you said.
So,
You have to
the senus, bitte.
just escape the word. To sow this, the
Pasch.
ureas of the Sefer Torah, we sow out of gidin from an animal. So gidin could be plenty. There's kosher gidin, and then we have the gidinosh as well. And we, as a matter of fact, we find that in a gidinosh we are allowed to sow. So how come? You'd raise the same question as the gidinosh, of course, is also bachila. So how come we're allowed to sow with the Sefer Torah with the gidinosh? But the answer for this question is that what the Torah says, "Minamuta beficha," the ikka kpeda was only that the type of animal you're taking the gidin from, and you're using it to sow the Sefer Torah, has to be a kosher animal. But it doesn't mean to say that it has to be kosher practically. For instance, if you take an animal, a kosher animal, but instead of shechting it, it was just died by itself. It's an avela, of course, and you're not allowed to eat it. So one should say that you're not allowed to take off the hide of the animal to use it in order to write a Sefer Torah on it. Of course not. You're allowed, just as you're allowed on any kosher behemoth, which means that the Torah, the Ikka dogish is that it should be from a kosher type. Anyways, if we say that the tchelis was taken out of chilazon, that is a dak tomei, so then we have the question: how come the Chazal directed us to use a chilazon, which is a min tomei, it's a non-kosher fish, in order to take its blood to dye the tchelis? If we have this rule that minamuta beficha in all the mitzvahs, as the Book of Avraham points out in Hilchas Tkiyah Shoifa and Simin Tovkuf Pevov, so how come are we allowed to use the tchelis?
That was one of the objections raised, wasn't it?
What?
By Rabbi Yitzchok Elchanan, for example. That was the great dispute. It was one of the fundaments of the dispute, wasn't it?
On the tchelis, or maybe
on when it was originally